Thank you for saying that. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our commission workshop. We'd like to turn the meeting over to our city attorney, Mr. Groves, and allow him to frame the meeting.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the City Commission. When the Commission adopted Ordinance 2025-16 earlier this year, we repealed the redistricting ordinance that we had adopted in 2023. And in that repeal, we also the Commission committed to adopting a new redistricting plan complying with all applicable legal requirements to go into effect for the next regular municipal election in 2026. I want to pass out to you a timeline that I prepared to help you all understand the requirements that apply. The general election is in November 3rd, 2026, and if you work backward from that, the first important thing to note is that under 166.0321 of the Florida statutes, which is the same provision that was the basis for the lawsuit that prohibits municipalities and counties from redistricting for the purpose of benefiting or disadvantaging incumbents or challengers, that same statutory provision requires any redistricting ordinance to go into effect at least 270 days before the general election. And so you see on the timeline that the statutory deadline that we have to comply with our commitment is February 6th. Just to the left of that on the timeline, you'll see that I've marked out the date of December 8th, 2025. That is significant because that would be the last day that somebody could claim residency and be a registered voter in a particular zone in time to qualify for the 2026 election in Daytona Beach. Now, the new statute that prohibits redistricting for the purpose of advantaging or disadvantaging an incumbent or a challenger can be pretty tricky. One of the objectives that I think we should try to meet in your adoption of the ordinance is to adopt the ordinance as soon as possible, but delay the effective date for as long as possible with the specific purpose of giving everybody notice, all comers, whoever might want to take advantage of, trying to run for the election, that if you want to move to a zone to run for the election, we're going to give some time between the date of the adoption of the ordinance and the effective date. And so you'll see that if, as we've tentatively planned, you were to adopt an ordinance on September 17, 2025, that would give anybody who might be affected by the redistricting 82 days to try to get to that zone. And I think that's not necessary in order to comply with the statute, but it will help establish compliance with that statute. And of course, the other thing that will establish compliance with the statute is that we in fact do not want to redistrict for the purpose of advantaging or disadvantaging any of our seated commissioners or their potential challengers. So I wanted to lay out that deadline. Technically, you have until February 6th to adopt. But again, my advice has been, and we've talked about this in other public meetings, you want to adopt sooner rather than later. So we've hired a consultant, Mr. Kurt Spitzer, who was recommended to me by the General Counsel of the Florida League of Cities, who's a former chair of the Association of Counties, who has a lot of experience redistricting in the state, and who actually was the speaker recently for the Florida League of Cities Quality Cities webinar on charter amendments and redistricting. So with that, I'd like to introduce Mr. Spitzer and allow him to discuss with you where we are and how we've gotten there.
Thank you. Make sure that everybody can hear me twice. Glad to be here. Just a little bit about myself. I was not chair of the Association of Counties. I was executive director for a number of years, and the consulting firm has been around since 1989, and I think we've done maybe 35 or 40 redistricting efforts in Florida local governments, cities, counties, school districts. Some of them we've done more than once, but so we have some good experience with them. So what I want to do today is to talk a little bit about the redistricting criteria and the process, and then we can jump over to these draft maps that have been prepared for your consideration. And if you have questions from the commission, please feel free to ask anytime. So, redistricting is the process by which you adjust boundaries of the districts or the zones so as to equalize or try to equalize the population within those districts. They need to be as nearly equal in population as is practicable, is the term of art. It's not reapportionment. Reapportionment is when, after the decennial census, when Congress determines what the population is of all the different states, and some states might gain a couple of congressional seats, some states might lose some. That's reapportionment, not redistricting. It favors the principle of one person, one vote from the 14th Amendment, the 15th Amendment, the right to vote, the Voting Rights Act, which, by the way, today is the 60th anniversary of the adoption of the Voting Rights Act by Congress. So there are some general guidelines, and I'll go through these. The first one is equal population. That's the dominant criteria in any redistricting plan. For the state, in congressional seats and state legislative seats, they must be almost literally equal in population. For local governments, there's more leeway in local governments, and we'll talk about the spread that's an option for local governments to take advantage of. We don't dilute minority voting strength. If there's a minority majority district or two in the jurisdiction, we'll adopt a plan that seeks to preserve that criteria. We don't favor or disfavor. This is what the city attorney just referenced. There was a law that was passed in 2023 that, among other things, stated that a local government, the legislative body for a city, county, or school board, or special district, may not adopt a plan where the intent is to favor or disfavor an incumbent or a candidate based on residential address. Residential address, key thing here, and that's my understanding of what your basis was of your lawsuit that you had brought against you some time ago. We use census blocks. Census blocks are not technically a criteria, but this data is readily available. It's easily dumped into redistricting software in your computer, and it's very easy to move lines around and change population numbers for different district boundaries. And census data is presumed to be correct by the courts, so that's a key factor to remember. We follow significant boundaries, major roads, arterial roads, interstates, water bodies, parks, things like that make it easier to understand for the voters as to where the boundaries are. Generally speaking, major boundaries are also coterminous with voter precincts as well. So there's some good reasons to do that. They must be contiguous. You can attain contiguity by crossing a water body, but they have to be contiguous. They should be compact. as compact as possible. We try to preserve communities of interest, and we follow existing boundaries and preserve the core of existing districts to the extent possible. To the extent possible. It's difficult often to attain all of these criteria at the same time. In fact, there isn't a plan in existence now that attains all of these criteria at 100% for each criteria. It's just impossible to do that. So I'm going to go through these criteria in a little bit greater detail now, if my computer will help me out.
While Mr. Spitzer's trying to advance his PowerPoint, I do want to mention that when you look at the bullet point list of criteria, legally speaking, the first three listed are, in my view, the most important criteria. And to the extent that sometimes the application of the criteria to specific circumstances in a local jurisdiction create conflicts, the criteria that you want to give preference to are the first three of them.
All right, here we go. Now we're going. Absolute population equality is impossible to attain. We try to get the what's called the deviations from the mean, from the average population size, as close to zero as is possible. It's typically very difficult to do that when you're balancing all of the other criteria as well. But generally speaking, if you can keep the criteria no more than 3 or 4% over or 3 or 4% under, that's a good plan. That's a good goal to try to attain. Population is not registered voters. It's total population as reported to the census. And if you have two districts with differences of more than 10 points, that creates a red flag for local governments with the courts. Here's an example where in this jurisdiction, this was Jefferson County several years ago, the largest district was 5.45% over. The smallest was 7.4% under. That's a spread of 12.8 points, and that's not acceptable unless there is a rational public policy as to why you're doing that. But generally speaking, if you're over 10 points, that's a problem, and you need to adjust the boundaries so that it's under 10 points. We avoid diluting minority voting strength. The two most common ways of doing that is by packing and cracking. Packing is when you locate most of the minority population into a single district, thereby lessening their influence in other districts. Cracking is by splitting the minority population amongst two or more districts. So again, it dilutes influence in all districts. Here's an example of that. In this particular hypothetical example, we have a jurisdiction with two minority districts, which are 50% minority and 40%. In the plan on the left, we see where most of this population has been packed into one district. And the plan on the right shows where the population has been cracked into 4 districts. So either way, it dilutes minority voting strength, and we seek to avoid that. This is House Bill 411 from the 2023 legislative session in Florida. It basically did two things, and the city attorney has mentioned these already. One, it set a common deadline by which all local governments must adopt a new redistricting plan, and basically it's 270 days from the upcoming general election. And then the most important one for Daytona Beach is that, and this is literally out of the statute, districts may not be drawn with the intent to favor or disfavor a candidate for a member of the governing body or an incumbent member of the governing body based on the candidate's or incumbent's residential address. The voters of Florida adopted something that applied to the legislature in 2010, and it sounds kind of similar to this, but the key difference is it did not have the term residential address in it. It had favor or disfavor, but not the residential address. We use census blocks. They're readily available. The data is presumed to be correct. You can alter or supplement the census data, but there must be valid reasons why you need to do that, and there must be a valid methodology by which you're doing that. A couple of little anecdotes here. We've redistricted jurisdictions as late as 1 year from the next census using the previous decennial census. So we've redistricted jurisdictions, for example, in 2019 that used the 2010 census. On the other hand, we've also redistricted jurisdictions that asked that the data be updated. And we used the University of Florida Bureau of Economic and Business Research to do that. That's the gold standard for the state of Florida. The state of Florida uses Bieber for all of its data that it collects, and it affects school funding, local government, revenue sharing, health policy, all these different policies. But there are a couple of different problems with this methodology, and one of which was the methodology modified the last census data, but it could not modify race. So if we had different methodologies to update each census block, but it could not say, well, there's, instead of 50 African Americans living in census block 1001, there are now 100. It couldn't do that. It could say that there's maybe 70 people living there now, but it didn't know what their race was. So there are problems with doing that, and especially, why would we do that if the data is presumed to be correct anyway? So we follow significant boundaries, either natural or man-made, easier to understand for voters, usually coterminous with voter precincts, and it's usually, I would say almost always, coterminous with census block boundaries. Districts must be contiguous. You can maintain contiguity by crossing a water body. You have 3 districts now that do that. But we try to keep communities of interest together. We try not to split communities of interest up. And we avoid districts with what are called bizarre shapes. We've all heard the gerrymandering term from Governor Jerry of Massachusetts a long time ago. And this shape here, which I'm sorry you can't see, but this shape there, as the story goes, someone said, well, that looks like a salamander, and someone else said, no, it's a gerrymander. So that's how that term came about. Here's a more modern day look at a gerrymander. This is a congressional district in North Carolina, maybe 20 years ago or 25 years ago or so, and that's what it looks like there. And this resulted in a Supreme Court case that found that race could not be the dominant criteria of a redistricting plan. It could be a criteria, but not the dominant criteria. So, in summary, these are the criteria that we follow. And by the way, in terms of the favor or disfavor, In this particular process that we've gone through now, I have no idea where any of the commissioners live. I do not have an address in my database. I don't know where they live. We avoided that possible problem to the greatest extent possible that we could. So it's impossible to draw a plan with 100% compliance with all of the criteria. So you balance these criteria against each other, with population always being the dominant criteria. So this is the existing zones in this map here. And remember that there's generally a 10-point spread between the smallest and the largest district that's acceptable in the courts. Well, here, it's almost a 47% spread there. So that's way out of whack. But also, I might just note here that there are two minority-majority districts, and there's another district which has an African-American population of a little bit over 30%. So just keep that in the back of your head. We developed 8 plans, and these are all on the wall there. We began with alternative 1, and then we went to 2, 3, and so forth. Then we came back, circled back to alternative 1, and we came up with 1A and 1B. But 1, 1A, and 1B all split the barrier island with 3 districts. They spill over into the mainland, but the current practice of splitting the barrier island amongst 3 districts is maintained in those policies. The other 5, 2 through 3B1, split the barrier island amongst 2 districts. And so we just wanted to show some alternatives to see what was possible. So here, alternative 1 has a spread of 6.5 points, so it's well within the 10-point criteria. It maintains 2 minority-majority districts and creates a minority influence district in District 3. And we'll go into these maps in a second. 1A has the same effect. It's a little bit of a different shape, but only slightly. But it still maintains the 2 minority-majority districts and creates a minority influence district.
I'm sorry, Mr. Spitzer, the numbers might be hard to see, but if you're comparing 1 and 1A, is it fair to say that 1A increases slightly the majority-minority percentages in the 2 majority-minority districts? I think that's what the data show, compared to 1A versus 1. There's a slight improvement, it looks like, in the majority-minority percentages in 5, 6.
I'm not sure if I would say that. It does for Zone 5, but it's essentially the same for Zone 6.
And it looks like it's a little bit higher also in Zone 3 in creating?
A little bit higher.
Yeah.
And here's 1B. Again, maintains the 2 minority-majority districts and creates a minority influence district and has an acceptable spread of 8.33 points. So then we move on to the alternatives that split the barrier island amongst just 2 districts. And we tried to create plans that were, in our opinion, legally acceptable and one came close, but most of them were not. And so in alternative 2, you lose the minority majority in both districts 5 and 6. It does create very much of a minority majority district, maybe some would say packing in zone 3. So then in alternative 3, again, it was difficult to maintain both zone 5 and 6 as minority majority districts, with zone 5 dropping down to a little bit under 49%. And then 3B1, zone 5 was close, but still did not remain over 50% African American population. So now, if your direction is to try to work on one of these plans to try to correct these faults, where we can try to do that. Let me just give you some of the criteria here. We've talked about acceptable spread. All of them have an acceptable spread except for 3B. That has a spread of greater than 10 points. Some, the 1, 1A, 1B, all preserve the minority majority districts, whereas the other plans, 2 and the series beginning with 3, do not. They all create a minority influence district, and 1, 1A, 1B, and 2 are better in terms of compactness. There are formulas that you can use that compare the shape of the district to a perfect circle. A circle is the perfect shape in terms of compactness, and it has a value of 1. None of these plans had a value of 1, and I've never seen a plan that has a value of 1. But plans 1, 1A, and 1B, and 2 were better, noticeably, than the other plans. So in terms of compactness. So if there's any questions that you might have, I'm happy to answer them if you have any now.
I do. Am I on? Okay. Looking at alternative 1, I guess you're calling that 1A. Zone 5 is, ever since I was a kid, has always been a minority district. Where is that cutting actually off?
Are you talking about the western boundary of 5?
Correct.
I'm sorry, say again?
Could you tell me where that actually cuts off on zone 5?
Let me jump to the software here. That might be.
Because we're not actually seeing any streets.
Yeah, I know.
Okay.
I know. Okay, so this is I'll get to your question, but let me just. This is the C, and this is the shaded areas are the existing districts, and so when I'll pop in a line here, these lines are the suggested boundaries for, in this case, alternative 1. Okay, and this pattern is. The symbology is the same with all of the plans. The shaded areas are the existing districts. The lines, whether they're black, red, or blue, are where the proposal is. So, and we can zoom in. And I'm sorry, the question was?
Okay, so Zone 5 has always been a minority district. And with all the growth growing on the west side, I'm actually wondering, where is that cutting off?
Well, it cuts on I-95, if
Okay.
that's the western boundary.
I-95.
The current western boundary of 5
I see what the current, I know what the
went
current.
west,
Okay,
like that. And 5 lost some of this area under this plan, but it maintains minority-majority districts in both
so
5
all the
and 6.
way up to 95.
Right.
Okay.
So, since
And
we're,
then how far in?
well, 5 and, as I recall off the top of my head, 5 and 4, your district, had to lose population. Your district had to lose a
Correct.
lot. But 5 also had to lose population. So the areas that were cut out of 5, this is where 5 is now, are these areas here and here. All right? And let me mention this. These little gray lines are the boundaries for census blocks. And as you can see, sometimes they're block-shaped, but a lot of times they're not. They could be a polygon that's anything but a square. And sometimes there's census blocks inside of other blocks. And so here, this is block 3006, and it has a total population of 285 people, African-American population of 265, Hispanic, and white. And let me, I should have mentioned this earlier. All of these maps here shows the actual deviation from the average in terms of numbers. It shows the percent deviation. In this case, this is the existing district, but these tables, the methodology is the same for all of the maps. So you add up the largest district with the smallest one, and that's how you get to this 46-point spread. Then we have white, black, other, Hispanic. For the last couple of census tabulations, there were 6 or 7 different categories of race that people could choose from. And not only were there 6 or 7, they could choose 1 race, 2, 3, 5, multiple combinations of race. And so when we say population black and percent black, these are people who've said, I'm either of 1 race or 2 races, but one of which is black, right? So if I'm either 100% African American, or I'm African American plus Native American, or I'm African American plus white, or I'm African American plus Pacific Islander, things like that. So then this category is everything else. Every other single race, Pacific Islander, Native American, or people who have identified themselves as being more than 2 or 3 races. And in some, you also have the option, I might add, to write in your race. We were involved with a project in Lake City, and we were talking about this topic with the city council, and one of the members said, I've always taught my children that race doesn't matter. And he was African American man. But what he put in on his form was human race. So he got put into the other categories where he ended up. Then Hispanic is an ethnicity. It's not a race. And so somebody might say, I'm white, but I have a Hispanic ethnicity. So if you were to add up white, black, and other, you'd get the total population for each zone and the total population of the city. If you added Hispanic into that, you'd get a population that is greater than what's really here. We look at Hispanic because people of Hispanic ethnicities enjoy some of the protections as races do, some races under the Voting Rights Act. But in the case of Daytona Beach, that's really not a possibility.
Can you pull up Zone 6 for me?
Sure. Under alternative 1.
Correct. Is it 1 or 1A?
Well, what we're looking at is 1.
Correct, okay.
And so zone 6, remember the green is the existing boundaries, and the black line here is the new boundary for zone 6 under Plan 1. 1A is a little bit
And how far is that going out west?
out west, I mean here?
At Zone 6? Yeah.
Right. This goes to,
That's not 6.
yeah, this is 6 here.
Oh, it is 6.
Jimmy Ann.
Jimmy Ann Drive,
And then how far does it go in?
on the east side.
Yes.
I believe this is Martin Luther King,
Okay.
I think. No, it's Nova
It's what?
Road.
Nova. Okay.
Nova Road, North
Okay.
Nova Road.
Now pull up Zone 1.
So this is, remember the blue is the existing boundaries of Zone 1. Okay? What this is the new boundaries of Zone 1 under this plan. It picks up, it loses some of the northern end of Zone 1 in the beach, but picks up, I believe this neighborhood here is Georgetown, I think.
And how, on map 1, how many commissioners on the beach side?
3. 1A, and 1B all have
And where do they split?
these lines right here is where the split is. And this is the pier, Main Street. Windmere Circle.
And,
So
and Zone 2, how far west are they going?
Zone 2, under Plan 1, goes to Vine Street.
Mr. Spitzer, could you zoom out just a little bit so you can show the entire map? So remember that one of the most important conditions that needs to be met is the as nearly as practical, one person, one vote. And since most of the increase in population has happened in Zone 4,
Correct.
you have to underpopulate Zone 4. And so we have a little bit of a situation where you have to compare the geometry of the city versus where we have minority voters. If you look on the eastern edge of Zone 4 as it currently exists, it's adjacent to three zones. 5, 6, and 1.
Right.
And of those three, excuse me, 5 and 6 are majority-minority zones. And so as you expand them westward, and this is what I think Mr. Spitzer found out in drafting his maps, you lose that concentration. So your choices can be somewhat limited in attempting to reach two objectives that are equally important, from a legal basis.
And that's why I brought up Zone 5. I mean, I grew up here, so I know Zone 5 has always been. I think any residents would want to see Zone 5 disappear. So, correct.
And just anecdotally, I went back and looked at the
That's the
elections
lot.
going back to at least 2002, and during that period, zones 5 and 6 have consistently selected African American
Right.
officials. And this is somewhat important because the Florida Supreme Court just came out with a case in the last 2 weeks regarding Congressman Lawson's
Right. There was
district.
litigation over, I think it was Congressional District 5,
Right.
still going on.
A
Yeah.
longstanding case that could, in some communities, affect what had been seen and what we've said tonight is a traditional and one of the more traditionally more important criteria for redistricting, which is preserving majority-minority voting districts. And depending upon the community, it may be harder to justify having that kind of priority. What essentially the Florida Supreme Court said is there has to be a showing that the majority-minority district you're seeking to protect has historically been benefited by being a majority-minority district. What's been the voting history? If you can't show that that's had an impact on the voting, you may end up having to look at that versus the Equal Protection Clause, including the reverse discrimination provisions of the Equal Protection Clause. So the reason why I'm bringing that up for you at this workshop is we do have a history in our community of having zones 5 and 6 as majority-minority zoning districts benefited
Yeah, I'm aware of that. That's why I
by
asked.
that composition, which gives us continued support in spite of the recent Florida Supreme Court case.
Now, I know this answer, but I hear it at a commission meeting a lot. Our redistricting needs to go according to our 2020 census, correct?
It does, right.
Okay, I just want that on record. You could explain that,
I mean,
even though I know there's more growth going on.
in full disclosure, I mean, it's possible to alter those numbers, but it's an order of magnitude of extra work. It's more difficult. I guarantee that somebody will question that data, that methodology. We've redistricted, as I think I mentioned, cities in the 9th year of the decennial cycle using the data from the previous census. And that was never challenged and was upheld. And before I forget, I might say this too. In 1A and 1B, this preserves the practice of having the beach split by 3 districts. And in some jurisdictions that we've been involved with, it's sort of a policy there that the beach is a community-wide asset and that it should be represented by as many people as is possible. And that's what this does.
And I'm not sure. East side had more than one. As far as I can remember, have you looked?
I think it's had 3 since at least 2000,
Yeah,
when I first
because,
arrived.
I mean, I grew up here, so I'm familiar with that as well.
But the other thing to keep in mind is that, arguments about whether you have the beachside as 1, 2, or 3 zones, are arguments
But-
about what your community of interest is.
Correct, and the community interest is totally different and a lot of sections on
Well,
Beachside.
one, you may not all agree on just what a community of interest is, but in addition, while that's an important consideration, you have to weigh that against the need to underpopulate Zone 4 because that's where the growth has been. The fact that the two of the three zones adjacent to that are historically majority-minority zones. There's only so many different ways that you're going to be able to redraw your map to preserve those majority-minority voting districts.
Right. And in full disclosure, my understanding is Zone 4 is growing by leaps and bounds. You know, we were not able to underpopulate 4 by leaps and bounds. Unless there's an extraordinary circumstance, you need to stay within the 10-point spread. And so, you know, in all of these plans,
Can you explain why?
it's an equal protection.
So the courts will, if there's a lawsuit involving that margin under the equal protection, 10% or less is a safe harbor. You go into court with 10%, the courts will presume it's correct. If it's more than 10%, there will be litigation, evidence, expert witnesses, challenging the basis for the data. It makes litigation extraordinarily more complicated. And as Mr. Spitzer pointed out a little bit ago, for example, the Bieber data, if you were to use something that was updated from the census, they don't actually allow you to track minority numbers in those later years. And I think, Mr. Spitzer, you explained to me that some of the Bieber numbers can be projections based on things like utility bills.
Well, Bieber, it's the Bureau of Economic and Business Research at the University of Florida. They've been around for 75 years, and they are excellent at what they do. And one of their primary methodologies is over time, based on a household's electric consumption, they know how many people live there. And that's not the only thing, but that's one of the main things that they use.
Well, actually, I know Zone 4 said we can only do 10%, is that right? But I can tell you, there's a lot of snowbirds in Zone 4, but I know you have to go by the numbers.
Have to go by the numbers, and they should complete the census up north or here, but not both.
Correct. There's a lot of snowbirds that actually don't vote.
So this is Plan 1. There's an alternative 1A. And you can see this, it brings in just a couple of minor adjustments. This park comes back into Zone 1 where it was currently. And then this area here goes back into Zone 1.
And what are we looking at?
This is 1A.
1A.
You said Zone 1, but you meant
I'm sorry, this goes back into Zone 5. The
So,
park
okay.
went back into
Okay.
Zone 1. Those are the only differences between 1 and 1A. Then,
Excuse me? We don't have a copy of 1A.
1A is 1.
Does theirs?
you
Three
should have
different.
1A, and 1B.
We got 1,
We do not.
2, 3, 3A, 3B, and 3B1.
Well, you're missing 1A and 1B for some reason.
we can distribute those after the meeting. But
Are
you're going
they-
over the specific differences
they
right now.
up
They're
here?
also up on the wall.
They
On
are.
the wall, against the doors, are all of the 1 maps. So you have alternate 1 on the left, 1A in the middle, 1B on the right. And as Mr. Spitzer just explained, the only difference between 1, which you do have, and 1A, which you don't, is the reintroduction of a park back into Zone 1, and then the area on the southeast corner
park.
of Zone 5. Yeah, can you show them where that park again is, park is again?
Right here.
And this is 1A?
This is 1A, so.
Okay.
Well,
In-
all of the ones had this park.
So-
I'm sorry, 1A and 1B moved this park back into
That's
All of
within,
them, okay.
into Zone 1.
So the line, the road in front of it, the Bellevue Ave, to the other side of it, all Zone 3 again. Housing, so all Zone 3 on the other side. Okay. All right.
just ask on the mic.
Oh, on 1, is Amazon on 1?
So Amazon.
Which is no,
Mr.
it'll never
Spitzer-
be any development there.
Yeah.
It'll all be commercial, probably industrial.
I don't think he
guessing.
knows where Amazon is, but we're talking about the north side of
That'll be
Bellevue
off
Road.
400.
Gotta help me out here. Is it around here somewhere?
It'll be in the west, west side of 400, be north, behind the airport.
Okay.
Zone 4.
So here's the airport.
That goes in zone 4.
Right.
Yes, this is in Zone 4.
I was just
And
curious.
remains in
It'll
Zone
never
4.
be developed, it's all county, but I'm just curious. Most of it's a
Mi-
small
Mr.
section.
Mr. Spitzer, you were going to explain what the difference was between 1A and 1B?
Right.
Okay.
So, for the difference between 1A and 1B, we're looking at 1A now. The difference in 1B is that 1B brings in this area, which currently is in Zone 6, back into Zone 6. Okay? And this is Cypress Street Park.
That is,
That currently is in Zone 6, and under 1B, it remains in Zone 6. Okay?
Cypress Park. And that's the only difference in that.
One other matter as well. This area here is in Zone 3 in 1A. I believe it's in Zone 3 right now as well. This is moved into Zone 2. And the reason that that was done is that if you don't do that, the spread in 1B would get over like 9.6 points. It probably acceptable, but this gives you a little bit more of a cushion. Okay?
All right.
So these are all the plans with the beach being split amongst 3 districts. Then we move into the other plans, beginning with alternative 2. And the split, I believe, is on International Speedway. Yes. ISB is the split between the beach, north and south of the beach. Zone 3 moves entirely onto the mainland. And Zone 5 crosses over to across I-95. And I believe this is Margaritaville, is that correct? So it captures that area there. But remember that these plans have result in, and especially alternative 2, both 5 and 6 are no longer minority-majority districts. Not only that, they're diluted
Right, if you-
significantly. And zone 3 is, some would argue, packed with minority African-American folks. Okay, so, but the attempt here was just to try to see if there's some way to work something out where the beach is split just amongst 2 zones or districts. So that's alternative 2. Alternative 3, same split here, but different shapes in the mainland communities of the zones. And so zone 3 is here. Zone 6 is quite a bit different. Zone 5 still crosses I-95.
So you lose minority zones.
All of the plans that split the beach into only two districts would lose at least one minority-majority district. And this one loses one and increases the African-American population in Zone 6 up to almost 60%. And then 3A, similar as 3. Let me show the difference. But there are really little, just minor tweaks here, just to try to get these numbers better. And this went on with all of the other of the 3 versions. We attempted to get to a plan where you would maintain 2 minority-majority districts, and we got close in 3B1. And in 3B1, Zone 6 is 58% African-American and 49.4% African-American in Zone 5. But it still is not a majority, and the African-American population in Zone 5 is, some would say, is diluted down, okay? So those are the plans that we've come up with. Any other questions or suggestions?
In an ideal world, commissioners, commission members, and Mayor Henry, we would get some feedback. You know, you can't take a vote tonight on, but you could give us feedback for purposes of preparing an ordinance that doesn't have 8 maps, it has 1 map, right? So your comments on those maps would be appreciated. If on the other hand, the consensus is to go back to the drawing board, while I think that would, to some extent, undermine what I think is a beneficial strategy in trying to get an ordinance adopted quickly with a long lead time on the effective date, we technically do have some additional time to try to work on these things, although, Mr. Spitzner, I think it would be fair to say that when you start moving these boundaries, it's quite a bit of additional work to then look at the impacts on all of the other issues, such as majority-minority voting and compactness, et cetera.
Yeah. It's like pushing in the side of a balloon. You know, you push it in, but then it'll come out on the other side, and it's happy to do that, but we're I think at the point now where since we've worked on this for a couple of months, so we're pretty familiar with the data and where the population centers are.
Just saying, I like Plan 1.
That's, if I was going to vote today, it would be Plan 1, because you would be losing, I mean, from growing up here, I know the zones pretty well, you would lose a lot of minorities. Would be very happy.
With following significant boundaries and keeping communities of interest together, I don't know if alternative
You want
one,
now?
keeping communities of interest together. Alternate one cuts up the beach side a lot, and I don't think that's a good idea.
So what map were you looking
3B1.
at? And I would have to disagree. I have, grew up here, a lot of us have, and there's a lot of different interests on beach side.
That's the worst, man.
Only two zones.
When you say communities of interest, it's not just the beach side of community of interest. What you do with that map is you take, any of those maps at the bottom, it causes, Margaritaville be carved out and put over on the Zone 5. All of the people in Margaritaville are a community of interest. Their interest is LPGA corridor, not the other side. Still be doing it. Definitely, I feel like big commonality they have. Everybody on the LPGA corridor, west side of 95, they've got one interest. Bridge.
And they're all been going over past 95, all gated communities, Margaritaville, Pelican Bay, all of them.
So what would be the difference if we separate beachside, so
Because
we don't have a
you would be
say?
separating Zone 5.
And three, you said three.
And actually 6 as well. And those are minority districts, and they've always been minority districts.
I don't understand when you say that it's being carved up. You gotta carve some of it up because they have to take some more of the space on the other side. Unless you want to make it, I like having stay with it.
Well,
Go ahead.
representing on beachside, you would only have maybe 10 blocks, one area. That doesn't make sense to me.
You're still representing the beach side, you're representing the interest of the beach. You still have free commission.
The number one here looks to me like that it splits the southern border of Zone 2 is down Main Street, which splits an area of great interest because we've been working hard to try to unite the people on Main Street and to keep everything going in one direction. If you put a commissioner on one side of the street and one on the other side of the street, it's kind of one of my pet peeves. It doesn't make good sense to do that because then that street, the merchants are split.
Is that split?
You're speaking, I believe,
Main Street.
this is Main Street,
Mm-hmm.
of this area here, is that correct?
Right.
Well, I mean, we'd have to look and see what the population is. I believe this is a commercial area, though, is that correct?
Pretty much.
Or at least that which abuts Main Street, right? We have split blocks before, and you gotta, we can try that. We'll have to see like how many people are here and using aerial satellite images, if these areas abutting Main Street look like commercial properties or are they residential, right? The areas to the south of these census blocks look more residential to me, but the area up close looks more commercial. So for example, let's just pick this block here. This block has 88 people that live in it, but you know, if you look at this, these are homes or apartments in the southern half of that block. You could, I believe, you could split these blocks so that, your objective is to have folks who abut Main Street be in the same district. Is that correct?
Right.
Right.
Both sides of the
We'll
street
have
be in
Main
the
Street,
same
The
district.
whole Main Street in one district.
Yeah, both
One
sides of
way
the
or
street.
Take that whole street, put it on one side.
Whether it goes to zone 2 or zone 3, it ought to be in the same, zone.
I think I agree.
Well, there are two ways to do that. One is to just move this boundary south to the southern border of these blocks. I don't know how many people that would be, but I bet it would cause the plan to have to, if we take this many people out of this zone 3, we'd have to find some place to put them back in. Or just do some research and see if the northern tip of these blocks could be carved out and moved into zone 2.
Do we have a consensus that wants to do that? I'm okay with trying to accommodate, but I think we have a consensus in terms of we want to be on consensus, but majority, that we want to stick with zone 1. I heard 3 people over here.
Map one.
They were with zone 1.
Map 1.
Map 1. But Commissioner Strickland, Commissioner, I understand that, but I believe there's benefit in both people representing. I think these two can attest to that.
Yes, we've had to deal with that with Bethune-Cookman.
It actually made it stronger. To me, they both were able to collaborate and meet with the folks and bring them together.
I don't think the merchants on Main Street would do that, but I can't prove that at the moment, so I'll be quiet.
So what I think is that we have a consensus. We want to stick with map 1 and then I think that if you look at what he's proposing,
Right.
consider that in your.
Just a quick question, though. There's very few differences between the ones. Both 1A and 1B put Bethune Point back in Zone 1. And then, and so I don't know if you want to look at those 3 differences and decide which of alternatives 1, 1A, and 1B might be the preferred map between those 3. You want to go through those differences one more time, Mr. Spitzer?
Sure.
Just for the benefit of the commissioners, since they didn't actually get 1A and 1B, and that was our office's bad, my apology.
This is map 1. This is 1A, which brings this park back into zone 1, where it is already, and brings this area here back into zone 5, where it is already. That's the difference between 1 and 1A. And then 1B begins with 1A and makes just 2 changes. It pulls this area, Cypress Street Park, back into zone 6 where it is now, and it pulls this area out of what would be zone 3, what is zone 3 right now, and puts it into zone 2. And remember, this is necessary if you want to keep that spread. If you want to move Cypress Street Park back into zone 6, my recommendation would be to move this as well, so your spread doesn't get up like to 9.6 or so, which is still acceptable, but it's getting a little bit high up there. if the direction is to see if we could take the northern area of these blocks and move them into Zone 2 in Plan 1, 1A, or 1B, we can do that on all three. It's the same exercise. It wouldn't be that difficult to do.
I'm still okay with one.
Pardon me?
I'm still okay with one.
One.
Good, I'm just thinking that it would strengthen perhaps the vote for Main Street by having two voices. Commissioners can come together and have a public meeting and discuss and plan and work it out together, you know? Please, smirking.
Keep my mouth shut at this time.
Who was the other commissioner? Him and who?
I'll speak at the end. I'll wait.
It'll be Commissioner May and Strickland
Okay.
for Main Street, correct? She was asking.
It's all her now because we went back to the old thing.
Right, but if one, the,
Split, we would share.
Understand what share means.
whoever is in office.
Mr. Spitzer, you said 1A and 1B is including Bethune Point Park?
Yes, in Zone 1.
I'd be okay if Zone 1 had the park. The Bethune Point Park.
Bethune Park.
I didn't hear you.
If Zone 1 had the Bethune Point Park.
This area right here.
So without having Mr. Spitzer do a whole lot of additional work, if you wanted Bethune Point Park to be in 1, I think you would choose 1B because he's prepared 1B that includes Bethune Point Park in that zone.
Well,
I'm with zone, I'm with one.
the park is included in Zone 1 in 1A or 1B and 1B. So
Single one.
One,
Okay.
the park is included.
1A and 1B, not
No.
1.
Oh, 1A and 1, okay.
Only
I'm-
1A and 1B.
I'm with 1. I just think it looks better.
The other maps, those other maps that we were considering, they diluted minority interest. I don't even know how we can, not even,
You're talking about the two beachside zone maps?
yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Diluted that. I don't know why we even considered that.
the only one that gets close
think
but still doesn't
residents
get
would
there
really be
is
after
3B1.
So I
The only-
think I'm sorry, I think there's enough direction for us to proceed with preparing an ordinance for first reading. Based on what I'm hearing, of course, y'all will still discuss and vote on an ordinance. And Mr. Spitzer will look at, and to see if maybe in preparing that map 1, he can add some properties on the south side of Main Street. And still maintain the majority-minority numbers and the margins.
Right. To alternative 1. Is that correct?
Yes.
Uno.
Uno, no alphas, no betas. Okay. Any other questions or comments? We'll start our meeting at 6:10.
Don't we have the raising of that flag before the